Good morning and magandang umaga. Kabustanid si kayo namin. Naimbag nga bigatyo. Kababayan, you're watching Kababayan Ka Sally Kayo, Episode 8, October 8, 2022. We have a lot of topics to talk about, but we may not have enough time. So this morning, and I hope you're watching and on your at your breakfast table because we have an interesting follow-up topic on a high-profile case in the Philippines. And I have with me a gentleman, and I'll introduce him later, a friend, and who will help me talk about this case and educate us on the process of law here on Guam, and I'll talk a little bit about the process of law in the Philippines as well. So stay tuned. We'll have an interesting show. Enjoy your breakfast while you're watching, and we'll be right back after a short commercial. Isaac? Welcome back to Kababayan Ka Sally Kayo, Episode 8, and today is October 8, Episode 8. And we are going to talk with a gentleman about the Vong Navarro rape case and act of lasciviousness that was charged by a wannabe model and an actress in the Philippines that's now trending. So with me this morning is attorney Doug Moylan. He's a friend, and his mother was a dear friend. I worked with her during the 18th Guam legislature under Carl Gutierrez, and yes. I really enjoyed working her. I miss her. Anyway, so attorney Doug Moylan received his law degree from Santa Clara University School of Law in California, right?
Yes, Sally.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show, and thank you for coming. And he's licensed to practice law here on Guam by the Guam Bar Association, and also in the state of Washington, right?
California and Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C., okay. But you're more active here, right?
That's correct.
And he's been in practice for over 30 years. He served as the first elected Attorney General of Guam, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I remember those days. I liked you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally.
And he served as a legislative counsel during the 25th, 26th Guam legislature. And today, this year, he's vying for the seat of the Attorney General of Guam. And I'd like to welcome Attorney Doug Moylan, and we will talk about the Vong Navarro case, which is still trending up to now. So Doug, I sent you an email just to fast track our, so we don't have to talk too much about the detail, right?
Our discussion.
But just briefly, this incident happened in 2014, and I remember it was July, okay? And this famous gentleman known as Vong Navarro, he's very popular in a noontime show called Showtime. Okay, watched by millions in the Philippines and all over the world.
Public figure, John.
Yes, very. And so what happened on that one evening on July 17? He was called by this lady that is now charging him. Okay, her name is Denise Cornejo, and she was wanting to be a famous to get on the modeling career, and also the acting career. So I guess they know each other. So they one night, Vong was out and about with his friends, just drinking beer, and he gets a call from her. So one thing led to the other. She invited him to his condo, and videos, the CCTV, caught that she came down from her condo to fetch him, got on the elevator, and they went up to her condo.
Okay.
And so one thing led to the other, and they had sex. Okay?
Okay.
So that was well and good. There was no fuss about that. Now, on July 22nd, the same incident happened. She invited him back to her condo, okay? And they had oral sex before intercourse.
Yes.
But after the last act, sexual act, she had managed to call, and I don't know if it's a concocted story, but she called her boyfriend and two of his friends, and they came over, and they just beat up the guy. I showed you the picture.
Yeah, he looked like he had been assaulted, beat up.
Okay, so the incident happened in a place called Taguig. You know where the fort is? Have you been there?
Oh, no, I have not.
Okay. So it was in the region of Taguig, but her boyfriend called the Philippine National Police, reported the incident, and they're located in like about an hour from Taguig. So they came and investigated. That's already hazy, okay?
Okay, jurisdiction question.
Jurisdiction,
Okay.
yes, because there is a police station in Taguig,
Mhm.
okay? So I guess the police filed charges, and Mr. Navarro counter charge, of course,
Okay.
and he said that it's not true. Anyway, make a long story short, the Pasay City Police did the investigation, and it went to the Department of Justice, which is like our Attorney General's office.
That would be correct under the local system on Guam, yes.
That's almost the same, right? Except this is AG,
Right,
and they are Department of
GPD.
Justice.
right. They would be
Okay.
equivalent, I guess, to the Guam Police Department.
Okay. So was the process right, except for that jurisdiction issue?
Well, Sally, we spoke about how the Philippine law is different than the American law. And Guam law is an American law, but it's a local jurisdiction of the government of Guam. So I speak from the perspective of what would normally happen on Guam.
Yes,
And I
sir.
recognize that the Philippine government and their law does not have a jury system, which you kind of pointed that out to me,
Yes.
which was, I guess, a significant difference between what we're used to in the United States and compared to the Philippines. And I do also recognize that the Philippine government has much Spanish influence that has affected a lot of their divorce statutes and the enforcement on the criminal side.
Absolutely, yes.
So from how I can understand, we're talking in the criminal area as opposed to the civil. There's significant questions about whether or not the facts actually occurred the way that either the alleged victim says it occurred, and what the defendant, we call them a defendant in the United States, the accused, the suspect,
Right.
in this case. So the question is, the charges were brought by the victim to the Department of Justice in the Philippines.
I don't think so. I think it was the police that brought the initial,
The case
after
to their Department of Justice.
yeah, referred it to they had that jurisdiction, right?
Sure. Well,
Okay.
the question, at least from a Guam perspective, for
Okay.
instance, if this was happening in Saipan and then they came to Guam to file the charges, obviously it would be a different government and jurisdiction. The question of jurisdiction is always very important when we approach it from a legal perspective, because you must have the proper people handling the complaint and then adjudicating, in this case, a crime.
Okay.
So you'd have to be on Guam. For instance, if this happened outside of the boundaries of Guam on a ocean liner or something, there would have to be a question of whether or not Guam would be the proper place to adjudicate the crime that occurred. So
Okay.
I kind of use that. I'm not sure what the Philippines law is in terms of this particular, is it a province of another, it was a different province that
No,
handled it?
it was in Metro Manila.
Right.
Yeah.
So there may be no jurisdiction question if it was within this Metro Manila
Okay.
area. Because, on Guam we have different GPD police precincts. But just because you go down to Agate and file the police complaint, that wouldn't prohibit the Attorney General's office or GPD from referring it to the Attorney
But
General's office.
that's not true. That's not true. They refer you to your village or the nearest police station in your village now.
That is just the discretion, but that's not the law.
Oh,
so
okay.
literally a person in
Well,
Dededo,
that's good to know, Doug.
no problem. The person that's in Dededo could go down to Agate and say that, I had been assaulted in Dededo. The Agate police commander and officers could literally just take the complaint there and indicate she appeared at this place and, go forward with it. All of it would go
Good
right,
info. Yeah.
right, and all of it would go to the Attorney General, who has purview over the island of Guam, whatever that is defined as.
Okay.
So yes, that would be how it would initially be investigated. That's the investigation stage.
Okay, let me take you back.
Okay.
Why did she file after the second incident? What did you think about that?
Yeah, everything that good point, Sally. And I think the viewers are also going to be looking at it in terms of
Why
credibility.
wait? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the statement that normally is done. The credibility of the alleged victim. And a person isn't a victim until after a jury in the United States decides you are a victim and this is the defendant, and accused is the criminal in that case. So in the case that you're bringing up, the young lady would have to go before the fact finder. The fact finder is, in our system, the jury normally. The judge can be a fact finder, but most people that are accused of crimes don't want a judge to decide the facts. They request a jury of 6 for misdemeanors and a jury of 12 for felonies.
Yes, yes.
So, good questions. Ultimately, in our island, it would be our neighbors. You, myself, everybody on Guam who gets put on that jury would listen to what you just said and then have to weigh what they believe the facts were, if it didn't happen or if it was consensual on her part, and then make a decision at the end whether or not there was a defense to the crime being accused of that individual, or if it just didn't happen. That sort of thing.
Right.
So, and then the judge would apply the law, whatever the criminal sexual conduct in the United States would be. So I see similarities with, obviously, to finding the truth and to ensure every community has justice. There are similarities between the Philippines and the United States and Guam, but there's significant differences. And I believe that jury system, the U.S. has, its law comes from England. They call it the common law. This idea that you put the facts before a jury of our peers, and then they decide, and that's in our Constitution, the right to a jury when you're accused of a crime.
Is that a good system?
I have found it to be the best system in the world.
In the world.
Because you need all 12, and we're talking a felony arguably here, you need all 12 people to all nod their heads in agreement that this is what happened. In cases where you have 1 or 2 people or some of the jurors saying, no, it didn't happen, and they can't come to a resolution, then they call that a mistrial, and then the government has the ability to bring back the charges before another jury and hopefully get a yes or no verdict.
Is this where the prejudice and non-prejudice
Yes,
comes into play?
Right. That is a very important
Okay.
part of any judicial system.
Okay.
Because obviously the accused and the victim want to make sure that there's nothing that's biasing or causing the fact finder to not listen to the facts, but to be using other factors to influence their decision. And when you only have one individual, or even 3 individuals if it's a panel of judges that are doing it, it just raises the question, a bigger question, is this person more pro-victim? Is this person more pro-defendant? those sorts of things.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
why we have this ability, this judge that's supposed to be neutral on Guam and the
Right.
United States.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be making fact-finding decisions if you choose a jury to decide the question.
Let me stop you there.
Sure.
Because I'll take you back to the campaign days of the primary election, and I'm all out there campaigning to the Filipino community.
Yes.
And the majority of people I hear from my kababayans, they're not voting because they're scared of getting, or they don't like being in that jury seat. Is that bad?
For a better community, the more people that participate in the right that we call U.S. citizenship, the better our community is.
Is it a right, Doug?
It is
They-
a right to serve on a jury,
Okay.
and some people and many people see it as an obligation because it distracts them from their normal days
Yes.
of their lives. But I am a person trained in government, trained in the law, trained in the system that we have, which I still believe is the best in the world, having seen other systems. So to get the best results, you need a good segment of the community to be on that jury panel and to give their perspective.
Yes.
Some people feel that that women are often victimized, and you have to give a little bit more discretion to the victim, given the fact that everything is a he said, she said in like the rape situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have other people that require absolute proof, and they want video and everything there. And it's up to the process of the selection of the jurors for the attorneys from both sides, the defendant and the government, to pick up the best jury possible so that we ultimately find what the truth is. And that's what the trial is all about.
Okay.
Truth.
And this fear of getting into the juror's seat is one of the reasons why they do not register.
Yeah.
But of course now they have no way out, because when
Driver's licenses? Yeah.
renew driver's license,
Yeah.
it's already there. But a lot of them
Avoid.
avoid.
Yeah. It is clearly out there, Sally. People, they find it as
And
a
they said
burden.
when they vote, when they vote, or automatically their name gets into the
jury's
jury's
master listing.
Yeah.
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 And that is true. That's one of the sources, but I don't think that's the only one. I haven't looked at it recently, but I think your driver's license, just having a driver's license, could put you into the pool of jurors. But I'd have to be check that.
I think also the renewal for plate,
It
for
could
the
be.
decal.
Yeah.
Decal.
It
Yeah.
could be. I know it's a constant struggle of the judiciary of Guam to keep up with their obligation to have a good panel of jurors. And we're not just talking the regular trial jurors. We're talking about the grand jurors and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
But
it's-
in my show, and because I was so disappointed with the turnout of we're off track, but it's okay. This is very good information. But during the primary, the turnout was so disappointing.
it was very low.
And I went out there and I counted how many Filipinos were supposed to go there and vote, but it didn't happen.
But Sally, as you know,
Didn't
there's that
happen.
big question whether or not they felt that this was the one to vote at, because it wasn't contested on the Republican side for the gubernatorial. But I do share, and I think the people
Please
that,
share.
that are, well, I believe that people that are bigger than us see it as it was because only the Democrats really had a hotly contested race. Normally, and I served on the Election Commission for 6 years, so I hear this and we've observed it, that when there's a contested gubernatorial every 4 years is usually the higher turnout in general, because the gubernatorial teams bring out more people versus the non-gubernatorial years. So in this case,
Yes.
you had the Democrats were contested and the Republicans were not contested.
We're not, yeah.
Right. So that can be one of the factors that caused a lower voter turnout. And arguably, the people that turned out were the Democrats who were strongly trying to select their gubernatorial candidate.
Yes.
Obviously, the senatorial was also. Republicans, I believe, only had 16 candidates. So there was just one extra that the Republicans had to decide who was going to go forward to the general election. Because
Yeah.
the primary is mainly for the parties.
But
Obviously,
yes.
the AG's race in it caused a little bit of confusion. Why were we there? Because there were only two candidates. but that's a different story, and that might be
Right.
have to
Let's not get
determine later.
into that.
Right.
And now there's another write-in candidate, right?
Exactly. But in terms of this idea that I would, and I've seen the Filipinos appreciate American democracy, unfortunately, I believe more than the locals do. I think it's that idea that you've come from a different country, and you want to be part of the United States, as opposed to being born into the United States, like myself. And
Right.
things. So
Yeah.
I went through the law program training, so I can understand the principles of what brought us to this form of government that we have, but many people don't, and I think that's that lackadaisical type feeling that you may be experiencing, but I do believe that because it was not contested, that was a significant factor.
But we can also look at the movements of the Filipinos coming into Guam. Okay, during my dad's time, I mean that's the first generation, and then I came in, right? And then we have a different different profile of Filipinos that are coming into Guam.
You are very correct.
Yeah.
And again, you are the expert. I'm just an observer, but yes, you are correct.
And
Many of my
do-
friends are Filipino second generation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, what I'm telling and what I'm not telling, but I'm suggesting to the Filipino community in a nice way, okay? I'm telling them in a nice way. You need to coexist with the locals and other ethnic communities here on Guam. You know, you cannot just say, "Oh, you know, what's in it for me?" You know. So I think we need somebody. The Filipino community of Guam must take a lead and kind of squash that thought of, you know, what are they doing for us? You know, we're only here to make money. You know.
You know, and I've often said that too, Sally, and I mirror what you're saying, because people that are in the government appear to be the higher people that go out and vote, because those officials that are their bosses or affect their salaries and their employment in the government, they're attuned to it. But in the private sector, I see what you're saying, because people don't even know what's going on in the headlines, because they're more
Yes.
interested in earning their wages, which is, you know, it's an important point for people.
True.
And they have their own lives to lead,
Yeah.
and all the drama that goes on in our government is normally seen by the employees or those candidates that are running, or those with a mission, a special, you know, interest in becoming a politician. So that's always been the struggle, is to get as much voter turnout as possible. But I would say the primary that we had this time was a little bit of what you're saying, maybe that attitude of people, but also it was significant because Republicans weren't really contested. So arguably more of the Democrats came out,
Yes.
but even those Democrats may not have wanted to vote there. They just want to wait to the general. Those people that didn't, the Democrats that didn't
Well,
come out.
I hope they do come out.
Yeah, I do too.
You know.
We have a better democracy, a better island, when there's more people endorsing the future leaders. I think it's like the jury. You know, the better pool you have of jurors, the better perspective of our community on finding the truth. So, you speak the truth when you talk.
So going back, let's go back
Sure.
to this case. So right now, what had happened was after 8 years, this case surfaced after Department of Justice find no probable cause and dismissed the case. Okay, so when I was there on September 19th, Vong Navarro was what do you call that? Served 2 warrants of arrest.
In 2018?
No,
When
just this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if Denise Cornejo filed an appeal in 2014, why now? Why is the decision just now coming
Yeah.
out?
To reflect upon the American system,
The American system.
they have deadlines of when you can file sorts of documents, and then they have the statute of
And the
limitations.
Philippines does too.
Right. And see, those are the general principles. We call it due process. Due
Yes.
process is that fairness that we all expect as human beings, that if you're going to try to find an answer to a question, then everybody's got to understand the process, and the process has to be fair. So when, back 14 years ago, I think, is it now about 14 years?
No, 8 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
That's when the case originally was brought? 2014.
No, it was 2014.
Right.
Yeah.
So 2014, the case was brought 8 years ago,
Yeah.
and the equivalent to the Attorney General, said the Department of Justice, chose that they were not to prosecute it because there was no probable cause.
Right. Lack of evidence.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that was a challenge back then, 8 years ago.
He
Is that
had
the-
no idea. He had
Yeah.
no idea
You
that
see, yeah.
she had filed an appeal.
And in the American system of justice, that wouldn't happen
Yeah.
because there would
He
be
would be served, right?
right. But if we're talking the statute of limitations question, to actually file a charge can be that long, depending upon the type of crime. Like for murder, for instance, there
Okay.
is no statute of limitations. So even if the police brought you in during the murder investigation, and the AG's office decided not to charge you back then, they could charge you 8 years later because the statute of limitations is still open.
Okay.
So
But
in
in
that
a rape case,
in a rape case, the same thing.
Oh, the
The
same
problem that the
thing.
government would
Okay.
have, though, is the quality of the evidence is now 8 years old. So that's going to be brought up at trial in the American system to show and discredit potentially the
Correct.
victim and the quality of the evidence. And you sitting as a juror will have to weigh that. You don't sound so sure of it, and as well as how long it took. It'll be brought against the government. Why did you take so long to bring this when you knew this was a suspect back then?
well, isn't that a violation of the accused's right?
Then
that
that's
it's
why
not a speedy
the
decision?
exactly the speedy trial right only attaches when the case is charged in the judicial system in
see.
America.
I see.
So in this fact pattern, it looks like they may have started the investigation, but no charges were brought. And when I say charges, filed documents before a judicial officer, somebody that's going to start the adjudication on whether or not you're going to be going to jail or not, the punishment phase of it. So it sounds like for 8 years they hadn't done anything, and then 8 years later
Could be.
they actually
yeah.
charged it. So
Yeah, but the Department of Justice,
yeah, why wait so long?
why wait so long?
Yeah.
But the Department of Justice said, we found no evidence, so they didn't file any charges against him.
And that will be used when it comes to that proceeding of the trial in the American system. They
After
would
the appellate, after the appeal.
the appeal normally is after the trial. That's what they call the appeals in the United States. But in this case,
Oh, okay.
see, it's the filing of the court when you actually file the documents.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, your fact pattern is that it was never filed in court. It was like the Attorney General over there saying that, well, I'm not going to bring charges at this time. For instance,
Okay.
Bill Cosby case is
Okay.
similar to what you're talking about. Remember, all the women had made all those accusations against him for
Mm-hmm.
10, 20 years before, sort of thing, and then they only decided to bring a criminal case against him after 10 years more than 10 years had expired, and then
Okay.
they went through the jury trial. The jury found him guilty. He
I
actually spent
see.
some jail time,
Okay.
but in his appeal that he filed after the jury trial, they found him innocent. The appellate court reversed the jury decision, and then I believe that you could not retry the case.
Okay.
Because it had violated a particular right that this actor, Bill Cosby, had. So
Understood,
I see
yeah.
that as maybe the akin to what's happening in the Philippines.
We'll talk more about it, Doug, and we'll take a short break. Welcome back to Kababayan Ka Sally Kayo, episode 8. And my guest this morning is Attorney Doug Moylan, who's running for the Attorney General seat this coming general election. And by the way, Zach will be posting the schedule for early voting, dates, time, and sites. And we'll post that later, right, Zach? Anyway, meantime, we don't have much time, and I just want to wrap up this Vong Navarro case, and I'll follow it up later,
Sure.
right, as it develops, right, if there's an opportunity, if you're not going to be too busy, Doug. But So I just want to tell my viewers, especially my Filipino followers, that it's a sad case because Bong is still not out on bail. The appeals court denied his lawyer's request to bail him out. So he's still in jail, but I think his wife, because it's Denise Cornejo, is asking the court to jail him in Taguig, which is not very safe. So his wife is asking through his lawyers to keep him at the NBI jails. So as of right now, that's still ongoing, and we don't know if he's been transferred to the RTC jail, the Regional Trial Court of Taguig. So we'll cut that off. We don't have much time, and I just want to talk a little bit about Attorney Doug Moylan and what's keeping him busy. And of course, it's the campaign as he is running for the Attorney General. How many debates have you had with Attorney Levin Camacho?
We've had 2 debates so far.
Okay,
They call them forums, but yes, they were debates. So. Can't sugarcoat it.
What do they call it?
Well, they call them forums,
Oh,
but I
forums.
chuckle because you can't put 2 lawyers in a room and you're going to have a debate. So,
And then the second one, we have Peter J. Santos,
yeah,
right?
the sleeper. Yeah.
And you know what's so distinct about that? I'm just being facetious here. Is Attorney Camacho, AJ Camacho, has his white shirt and his tie, and then I think you came in with your suit, right?
That's what lawyers. That's the dress that lawyers normally use when they're in formal events. Yes.
So very distinctly, and then Peter came with his island shirt. I think he's an island man.
Probably one of them. But yeah, it's important for the people. You know, this race, I believe. So, but the personality is always, that's what people vote for, is the personalities.
Yes,
So.
yeah. So how has it been so far? Are you out there campaigning?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And the Filipino community is very significant, just as much as the Chamorro community and all the other
Of
nationalities
course.
that we have here. And I
Yes.
appreciate this opportunity to speak out to the Filipino community. I have many friends, as many of us do, especially the first generation. I have quite a few of the first generation, and I know their villages or their provinces, I guess the Pangasinan, Ilocano, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So,
Kapampangans.
right.
Yes.
There's so many in the Philippines, and then I was told by another friend that there's thousands of islands. There's more than 1,000 islands in the Philippines,
Yes.
which is fascinating because you see it, but over 1,000.
Yeah.
Impressive. But Sally, this election is for the chief legal officer of the government. The people need to understand what is most concerning them as it relates to that. I believe crime is out of control on Guam. The meth addiction that's occurring and the crimes coming from that. You may see crimes going on, but if you read carefully into the police reports, it's drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been the toughest attorney general in Guam's history. When I served from 2003 to 2007, people know me as being a very difficult. They can call it difficult, they can call it hard, call it what you will. But when you take down criminals, you don't want a nice person. You need a person to protect the law-abiding community. The Filipinos, I've noticed, and this is not just to speak to you, to
Yes.
put smoke around me sort of thing. The Filipino community comes to Guam as a culture very much law-abiding. You see a lot of the men have firearms, and they're responsibly holding firearms. You see a lot of the women that are very Catholic. And that goes to our history, Guam and the Philippines, over 500 years for Guam of Spanish influence. So that the morality, the discipline, the following the rules very much is reflected in the Chamorro community and in the Filipino community. That's who I hope I appeal to, is the people that want to see criminals off the streets, locked up. And if I become the AG, I will reinstate that request to the judges that if the juries find guilt, the judges have to lock them up, because the deterrence right now for the past 4 years isn't there anymore. These criminals are gaming the system, knowing that, well, if I do this, I'm only going to get this amount of punishment and get out quickly. So, or not be put in at all. The catch release and the reoffend type of scenario.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
the candidates that are before the voters right now are different. We're clearly different.
Okay.
Levin is more therapeutic in his approach. He's soft on crime. I make no bones about it. If you want a candidate that goes in there and takes these accused from Guam Police Department, the public auditor, whoever, before you as the jurors, I will do that. And then when it comes to the punishment, whatever the legislature says is the punishment appropriate, I will ask for the maximum, especially if the case is warranted. Now, obviously, there's cases where you kind of look at the background and then decide, and also get the crime victims involved more, that they have a big say in what the sentencing would be. By law, they're supposed to, but I don't see it as much. I'm hearing a lot of crime victims out there saying that I was victimized, but where's the AG? I've got a 84-year-old Philippine Manamco that was victimized by the caregiver, according to her, filed the police report. First AG says to arrest the suspect. Second AG, the chief prosecutor, the one right under the attorney general, says don't arrest. Shocking.
Why is
84, we don't know. That's what's going to happen. The facts are going to have to come out. Why didn't this attorney general protect a Philippine Manamco, 84 years old? KUM.com, look for her story. Maria Delin.
Oh, I read about that.
Yes. First generation Philippine woman.
Yes.
From Pangasinan.
Yes.
Married Ilocano who's now passed away.
Well,
but
wasn't this the case where her daughter is involved?
that is the caregiver.
That's the caregiver.
She's accusing the caregiver. There's bruising that was shown all over her body, Guam Regional Medical Center. It's sad, but who was there to protect her? This attorney general was not. As much as he gives all these nice press conferences about we're here for the victims, we get all this money for the victims, he's not doing it.
Exactly.
He had 4 years to prove that.
Yeah.
When I was the attorney general, you never heard of crime out of control.
And we don't want a precedent like this.
Cannot have it.
Yeah.
If anybody should be protected by the attorney general, it's the weak, children, women, and Manamco.
And
those are the most
elderly.
vulnerable.
Right.
In Guam, we call them Manamco.
Yeah.
The Philippine equivalent would probably be a different name, but it's the elderly, as you say.
And Doug, this is the construction month, the industry month.
Yes.
And a lot of people who work in the justice system do not know that there are also a lot of Manamcos being abused by unlicensed contractors, and that's one of the things that you should look into. One should become an attorney general. I'm very much
have a history of protecting the Manamco.
Yes.
And in our own family, the Moylan family, there was problems. It's when they get, because the Manamcos are the ones that have the most money. They're the ones that acquire over their lifetime the most assets. That's why they're always the most financially vulnerable.
And they don't ask questions,
and
right?
and your
they're
cognitive
giving.
right, but also the cognitive ability goes down. This
Yeah.
memory, how much
Yes.
money did I have in my account,
Yeah.
and then their trust to the individuals. That's why I
Yeah.
say the caregivers of all the people that should be protected. It's the Manamcos that are in that age group of cognitive decline, and we have the public guardian who's understaffed, underfunded.
Yeah.
But that's why the Attorney General has so much authority and power to protect people that are the most vulnerable.
When you become the attorney general, I want to work with you on making the public law stronger.
Yes.
On this licensing of contractors.
I have a lot of ideas, and we can approach the legislature,
Yes.
and I'm sure they would be very receptive.
Yes.
That's why you have lawyers, a whole staff of lawyers. I believe he now has 55. I think we had about 39 or something of that number back, 16 years ago. But I will use those lawyers, and I was the legislative counsel for 3 legislatures, as you pointed out. I know how to write those bills, and we are, as lawyers,
Yes.
have the duty to
I know
help.
that.
Well, to help to create good legislation.
Yes.
And to focus the legislation on helping the most vulnerable, the people that in our community that need the help.
And you did a little bit, I think, with the legislation on the children with disabilities. Didn't you do that?
For the 6 years, I'm almost positive
Yeah.
we hit the pandemic. For the 6 years of the Republican legislatures, 24th, 25th, 26th,
Yeah.
yes, there's definitely We had DISID laws and a lot of other bills that were passed.
Yes.
I was the attorney for the senators at the time.
Yes.
And you get good. This is why that community is important. The Filipino community must speak out through that election, because they and everyone else will choose our leaders. And if the Filipino community has certain issues they need addressed, choose a good attorney general, choose good senators, and obviously choose a good governor. Because passing laws is the legislature and the governor, but
Exactly.
enforcing it is the attorney general.
Oh, mga kababayan, narinig yun yan kay Attorney Doug Moylan. We're running out of time. Thank you, Doug,
Thank you,
for
Sally.
the opportunity
Thank you.
to be with you and talk about a lot of other things. We don't have much time, but I'll bring you back.
Thank you very
Okay?
much.
And good luck.
And Sally, I ask respectfully to the Filipino community,
Yes.
to all our voters, to please vote for me. I believe I have the most to offer.
Pakisuportahan po natin si Attorney Doug Moylan for Attorney General. Kaibigan ko ho ito, kaya ini-endorse ko. Yung dalawang, hindi ko po sila kilala. Maraming salamat po. We're cutting this show short because we have another live interview. Unfortunately, we had a good topic, but we can only discuss so much. But one of these days, I'll bring Doug back and we'll talk more about things that are happening in the Philippines as far as, crime,
Sure.
right? And things that are going to happen for the better for the people of Guam.
Definitely.
Filipinos, local, and other ethnic group.
Yes.
Thank you,
you,
Doug, and I miss your mother. Let
I
me
miss her
tell you
also.
that.
Beautiful woman.
Miss her so
Great heart.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
nice. I love the way she put her clothes together.
She's very classy. My
Yeah.
mom.
Anyway, thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you, Sally.
And
very much.
I'll pray that you make it, and we'll campaign out there.
Thank you. Chismas.
Mga kababayan, salamat po sa panunood ngayong umaga at kasama namin kayo lahat. Tutok lang po kayo tuwing Sabado 7 a.m. dito sa Kababayan Ka Sally Kayo. Thank you so much. You have a nice weekend. Be safe and God bless.